Good night everyone and welcome back to the Nocturnal Corner with Bat, and in today's episode we are going to be looking at our first legendary weapon showcase, which is going to be the Avalanche, which originally came from a previous battle pass with the Steppenwolves and the Syndicate, where they brought back the chase mode. And Steppenwolves have some pretty impressive big old boys, but Syndicate basically hired us and our creativity was basically meta, so of course we made tall boys with Gravistars. Who knew the power of the fucking shotgun, eh? Especially if it shoots lasers. Oh well, sorry Steppenwolves, come again next time, eh? However, they never came back, so I guess they learned their lesson. Now, I thought we would take a little bit of a trip down memory lane when it comes to the Avalanche here. If you don't know, this is actually a prototype weapon developed in 1944. And the months vary depending on who you look at, but it is known that 1944, towards the end of the war, these bad boys were getting pumped out. And pumped out is more of, they produced around 18, and maybe one of them did okay, but they were on the defensive line. And since this was towards the end of the war, this thing didn't really get to shine, because the whole point of this thing was more of an offensive weapon, not a defensive weapon. And it had so many properties to it that just didn't actually help it to be a defensive weapon. However, let's look into this. The main gun, which we basically get in Crossout, not the whole Sturmtiger, which if you don't know is also the Assault Tiger or the Sturmtiger 6. Now, the Sturmtiger is basically on top of a Tiger 1 chassis. It has the same metal wheels, the same sprockets that overlap, and even the same engine. However, the problem with that is this thing went roughly around 20 miles per hour, not very fast, not very maneuverable, kind of sluggish, and a lot of that reason is because the weapon system itself, like the whole thing, was like 68 tons, which was 3 less than the Tiger 2. So that engine was really having to work with this thing. Imagine. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the gun. This is the Raketen-Werfer 61, or the RW61. This is basically a naval prototype weapon, which actually wasn't really meant to do artillery. It was more of a naval death charge launcher, firing a 2-stage rocket system. So basically it's a rocket launcher mortar on a tank, and it's a 2-stage system, so it's like a and since it has so much, power going off in this thing, you actually had to close the hatch and activate a ventilation system, so that way the gases didn't go in there and fuck up the crew. And if they just closed it and didn't activate the ventilation system, it would basically destroy the gun after one shot. So that's why you see all these little ports right here, which kind of varied. It seemed like every Sturmtiger was kind of different, like if they were just experimenting with model after model to see which one had better results. But basically this is where the gas would do a 180 and blast through here to keep the gun from basically destroying itself. And that was kind of problematic, because being a big rocket, all the smoke, and then have basically a big light up right here, like a flashbang in the sky letting the enemy know where you are, it wasn't very stealthy. So being on the defense kind of let the enemy know exactly where it was, and then only moving at that sluggish speed, it didn't really help it much either. So there was some issues, like I said, with this thing being a defensive weapon. However, if anything, this Tiger only had 100 millimeters of armor in the front, versus this one having 150, and then roughly 60 to 100 millimeters on all the other sides. This weapon is basically, think of the Killdozer, where he put a big box on top of a bulldozer, except this is the same concept, except they put a big ass box on a Tiger 1 and then slapped a 380 millimeter gun on the front. Previously, before this, there was the Stug. Now, the reason the Stug is before this is because this weapon is not actually a tank, as it is more of a self-propelled artillery system. And the reason that they kind of invented this thing is because the Stug was being adapted from an assault gun to a tank destroyer. So it kind of took away an essential part of the German infantry, which was a support vehicle to help them basically on their missions. they kind of tried to compromise with this by having a different tank, which was the Sturmpanzer IV, commonly known as the Broom Bear, which only had a 150mm gun, but you can kind of see the similarities of that one and the Sturmtiger. Now, saying all that, there is another downside to this weapon, and it is the reloading. Having such a massive weapon, the actual rocket, like the projectile itself, was about 1.5 meters long. It basically took the entire crew to put this thing in, plus a small crane on the back, and it was no easy task. It was definitely something you would kind of have to work at, and if you ran out of ammo, it was pretty bad. And that's saying something right there, because this thing, being generous, can only hold 14 rounds. That's right, 14, and that's if one was already on the loading tray and one was already loaded in the gun. Otherwise, it would only hold a measly 12 rounds. So what we get in Crossout is very generous. That was a big boy. But hey, having such a big boy as an assault gun is definitely something not to take lightly, because this 125 kg explosive bastard could go through 2.5 meters of reinforced concrete. So on the siege, going on the attack with this bad boy, you best believe if any enemy was in any bunker or building, that the whole structure was going down in one hit. Like, that's the whole potential of this weapon. However, being developed so late in the war in 1944, it kind of got put onto the defensive and really kind of struggled in that aspect, which I already mentioned. It basically was giving away its own location. The game didn't like me taking so long. So, in that history, the Sturmtiger was an interesting prototype concept, but at the same time, it had a lot of drawbacks that you might count yourself lucky that you don't find in Crossout. Now, granted, it was a mortar system, so this thing could load up pretty high with not that much depression, but it really wasn't meant to be shooting at tanks. Its sole purpose, like I said, was for enemy structures. That's why it has so much armor all around it, is because it was designed for urban combat. To basically go in there, and when there was too many enemies occupying that building, this thing would just basically destroy it, so the enemy force could, sorry, not enemy force, but still the force could push forward and conquer the area. And poor fate for the Sturmtiger, because we'll never know at this point if that's actually what it's meant for. Another cool fact is, see that little port right there? This thing could either have Hitler's buzzsaw, which was the MG42, or a secondary weapon. It could be a grenade launcher, so this thing could actually go boom boom. Pretty nice. Now, that is basically going to be your brief history of the Sturmtiger, where it was mostly seen on the Western Front. It was kind of a big waste of resources that the Germans really didn't have. If they were on the defensive already, having an assault weapon, which was meant for basically conquering, was probably not the best idea when they're in the defensive mode. So, this thing kind of got smacked a little bit. You can even find pictures of it having holes in the back, because that's not really where all the armor is, where it got basically defeated by Shermans. And a lot of the time, since this thing has so few rounds, they kind of just conquered these vehicles with no resistance, because the enemies couldn't reload fast enough or just ran out of ammo, so they bailed from the tank and retreated. Oh well, I guess. The poor fate of the Sturmtiger. Look, if anything, you guys are kind of complaining about, in like War Thunder, about this vehicle being really strong. Have no idea if they nerfed it. I haven't played in a while, but maybe it really needs that shine, because it really did not shine in World War II, guys. Anyways, that's going to be your brief history of the Sturmtiger and this gun right here. You see the Raketen-Werfer 61. I really hope I said that right. If I didn't, let me know. I don't speak fluent German, okay guys, so don't judge me. Alright guys, so now we're going to actually be looking at the AM-5 Avalanche by itself. We're going to try to be a little bit more detailed with this big beauty, and we're going to be first looking at the weld points here. It's only going to be buildable in the front at this low bar here at 8 weld points. Then coming across, you're going to have 7 weld points across, so it is going to be an 8x7 by 4. And of course you can't build on every part. You're going to have this little strip on both sides that you can't build on, and then you're going to have this sloped angle right here with the actual big stubby gun itself that you can't build on. However, you can basically build all around this thing like if it was a big box, your most being at the bottom, and of course you're going to have just little bits that you can't build around, but armoring around this thing, if you really want to do that, shouldn't be too difficult. And it's just basically going to be where the gun is pointed. That's going to be your one major weakness with weld points. However, since this thing is rather tough and durable with the perk that also boosts that, and you could probably put an inverter of an armory on this thing to even further boost that, you probably won't have too much issues, and you probably won't even really need to hide this weapon. Instead, you can actually just use it as a big chunk of armor, kind of like a railroad. Not a railroad, like a train plow or a freight train plow, because this thing can definitely take a hit. So, let's read up here. Fires are very slow projectiles that fly on a ballistic trajectory and explode on hit, has limited firing angles. So, obviously the limited firing angles means it is a frontal weapon. It can't, it's not a turret like the regular Sturmtiger. It can only face in the front. However, it does have a pretty good evolution and depression. You can definitely raise this thing all the way up so you can fire it like a mortar, and you don't really need to go down too much, but you can see the little ball here. You basically have a cone effect right there, and anything in front of you probably shouldn't have too hard of a time aiming at. Just try to keep in mind this thing does turn a little slow, it's kind of like the Executioner, where it's not just instant like a machine gun. It's not just gonna point right there like if it was one of the Defenders or the Protector. It's going to have a bit of a slow turn to it, so if you are moving quick and you're trying to get that hit and run with this weapon, try to keep in mind you got to wait for your reticle to get there, which doesn't take too long, but if you fire way too early, you are going to miss your mark. Now, the mortar is difficult to move, but if it happens to be near the enemy, it will ensure a psychological victory at least. Yeah, this thing definitely, even though it is one of the cheaper legendaries at the moment, and you don't really see it, it's definitely a weapon. Everybody knows that if this thing hits you, it's gonna hurt real bad, and you really don't like an avalanche flare coming and shooting into your side, because it'll definitely tear you up. Now we're going to be looking at the power score, as it is just a singular 12-point energy weapon. It's it's going to be higher up there. It's not going to be like one of the ones that's going to be 2 energy and you need 3 aspects, 4 aspects, 2 cannons, whatever. It's going to be the only thing that you're really going to fit on there. And if you really want another weapon, which is probably ill-advised, just so you can have the modules to really boost this one, you can probably put a shotgun or something on there, but I don't see why you would want to really do that. Now, we're going to get past that, obviously, like I said, high power score, and really you don't want this thing low power score, because it could probably one-shot all those vehicles from 4K and below. This thing is crazy damage. Now, the hit damage and the explosive damage, this thing is definitely up there. This thing is going to be hitting for projectile damage of 500 and the explosive of 200. And as it is a big boy mortar, like you can see that round in there, it's a pretty massive little rocket. It basically is going to have a very large explosive radius, so if you hit somebody on the side, you're taking out large amounts of armor. So yes, if you hit somebody directly on the cabin, you are doing 700, but you're also ripping apart their armor pretty bad, so you're going to be doing a lot more than just 700. And that explosive blast and the amount of damage that this thing can produce, so say if somebody has aspects or some shotguns or something low durability or even medium durability like some cannons, you can actually hit the top of their vehicle, and that explosive radius could actually rip off all of their machine guns or shotguns, or at least rip off a half of them or something, because it's very powerful. It hurts. Let's just say that it hurts. You can definitely strip with this thing, but it's definitely going to be a bit more difficult than, say, an Executioner or something that has a better velocity and is more easily aimable. Especially that velocity. Yeah, it's definitely the slow projectile aim. If you're not like up close, they could probably dodge this thing, because it's going to be slower than your mammoth. It's going to be slower than some of those other weapons. It's going to be slower than rockets. This is a very slow projectile. It's even slower than, say, the parser or the quasar type of slow. You can even see this thing travel through the air, and it is definitely a big boy when you see it traveling through the air, unlike, you know, grenades. So it's probably the slowest single projectile in the game. Granted, if you really wanted to use it as a mortar system, you can. This ball joint right here, like I said, can point pretty high up, so you can actually shoot enemies behind cover. However, and this is kind of my problem with this thing, is that I wish there was two modes for it, as in a regular cannon shot mode to where you're kind of aiming it like, you know, an executioner or whatnot, and then an artillery mode to where it would switch to having the trajectory shot, so that way you're not just pointed face up like a jackass, not really sure what you're aiming at, and just kind of just taking a guess of where the projectile is going to land. But I'm sure with enough training you can get used to that, but even if you do, you got to take into account that that projectile is going boom, and now it's coming down boom. Like, that's more than enough time to someone to see that you fired this big thing, because it is kind of noticeable when it fires. Probably not as noticeable as the real Sturmtiger, but you probably can track the big-ass yellow round in the air and just move out of the way, no matter what type of movement part you have, unless you basically are stationary because they shot off all your wheels or whatever. So that is something to keep in mind, and even if you are stationary, you're still probably going to have to try to predict where the round is actually going to fire at. So that's something to keep in mind. You can use it as a mortar, but it's not going to be really too effective all the time. This is why if you do see the Avalanche, you're going to see more hit and run builds where people come in fast, fire, and bail. That also kind of goes towards the fire rate. This is going to be one of the lower fire rates. This thing does kind of reload a little bit slow, and as a result of that, you're going to want to have, like I said, probably not a weapon, but reload modules. You got the Dead Man, you got the Echo, you got the Hadron, and then you got, you know, the Flywheel, whatever the hell the other one's called. And obviously, if you're going to go for the best of the best, you're going to have that purple Flywheel with the Hadron and the King Mine, which, yes, you can have all three of those, which you're basically dumping all that into DPS. Because if this thing actually starts firing way faster, you're probably really going to tear into an enemy no matter what power score they are. God forbid you actually go into a custom game with somebody who is not even close to a 12k plus power score. You're just going to whoop his ass any day of the week unless you're a terrible shot at point blank range. The effective range, like I said, this thing is... it definitely has the range. This thing, you can see the ball could probably point like near, not 90, probably not 80, like maybe around 80, 75 degrees up. You can definitely point up pretty high and just basically lob that thing. The accuracy, it moves slightly. It does kind of move slightly. It's something to try to keep in mind, but usually the accuracy is fine. It's not really going to be your worry. The main worry is just the velocity of the weapon. Maximum 10 rounds, that sounds about right. Sounds like a Sturmtiger to me. Just missing 2 more that you can fit. Like 6 on this side, maybe 6 on this side. Actually, I'm not really sure. I think it's like 4, like 12, and then 1 on the loading tray and 1 in the barrel to get 14. That's probably how it is. And, you know, you put a bunch of ammo boxes, you'll just be stacking up ammo and wondering where the hell you're keeping the shit. Probably have it all on a chain just dragging behind the vehicle. And here you go, this is going to be a rather nice perk to have, that penetration that they added. So that big old projectile is going to be slicing through there, hitting for 500s before it just explodes. Like slightly within there, you know, it's probably not going to get too far in there, but little ways. That way you can hit a little bit more with the big old explosive power that this thing has. Now, as I said, with the armor, it is going to be 1,592, you know, nearly 1,600 points of durability, so this thing is going to be pretty beefy, and with the perk of that 30% resistance to damage while it's reloading, that's just basically turning this thing into a tank. And like I said, if you want to add an Amamori or an Averter, it's going to be even more tanky. You could probably scrap that, because, you know, that's going to take away 1 point, and if you want to get maximum DPS out of this thing, maybe you want the Ermac, or maybe you just want to run Grizzly, and just get another additional stack of damage reduction to just boost this thing even more. Which, Grizzly doesn't sound all too bad, because this thing, like I said, like usually one of the benefits of some weapons is durability to mass ratio. This thing has a terrible nearly 2,000 kilogram mass more than durability, which makes sense. This was a heavy boy, like I said, was at 68 tons of tank right there. Sorry, mobile artillery, self-propelled shit. Yeah, this is a heavy boy. You can put it on a light build if you want to go for damage and really take advantage of the high amounts of explosive. You could try a Harpy, but if you go with Harpy and you actually manage to fit this thing, I think you're taking like almost a third, or actually a little bit more than a third of the Harpy's maximum weight, leaving you with frames and wheels, and you're about almost done with their armor. So that's definitely something to keep in mind if you're going to try to run light. That's why you really kind of want either a medium at least and a maximum of heavy. However, most people are going to tell you that the best way to run this thing is probably hit and run with some Omni Wheels or Bigfoots, just to go in there, hit, and then drive back. So you're probably looking more at the Hadron cabin. Granted, this thing, if you can add more damage to it, it's already high damage, which means you're going to get a high return back for it, because, you know, everything is based on percentages. So if you want to run like a Catalina and get 60% more damage with this thing, which I've never seen, it's probably going to hit real hard, like if you just got hit by a freight train. If you want to run, let's say, the humpback cabin, I'm sure that'd be effective. It's a heavy cabin. You could do something like that. You could probably put the one cabin that looks like a tow truck from Terminator. You could probably ram them, hit it with it. The only issue with that is the perk is nice for damage reduction to keep you alive, but the perk is one of those that gives you both a buff and a debuff at the same time. Meaning somehow, some way, your projectile does 100% more damage to yourself rather than the enemy. So you could hit that enemy for like 700, and then you hit yourself for like 1,400 somehow. Yeah, I wish that 100% would just go here for my enemy and then me, because I don't know, maybe that backblast, and they forgot to turn on the ventilation system on the shot before they fired. I'm not quite sure on that one, to be honest, how that actually works, but that's the case of it. You're going to do more damage to yourself than any enemy you hit, no matter where you hit them at. Great. Just try to keep that in mind. So the hit and runs are great, but and just be careful not to shoot yourself. Now that's going to be basically everything. Like I said, 12 energy, nearly 1,600 points of durability, and it is a very heavy boy. And then of course the projectile is going to be rather slow. So let's go back to our little boy here, and let's take a look at that real quick. First off, we're going to be taking a crack at the damage meter, just so you can see that it is 500 and 200, and there is a decent amount of impulse to this thing as well, so you can mess up somebody's shot and drive away if you hit them with it. But you can see it has a decent amount of depression, so you can basically shoot somebody in front of you. This can't move too much to either side, but just enough for you to be able to aim if they're really coming up to you. You got that sweet cone. There you go. It does. And then you're gonna have that Evil. There you go. Where you can aim this thing decently high. But here you go. You try to launch this thing as a mortar and predict where they are. you can definitely see that's a pretty big explosive radius, but obviously the enemy, when something is moving at that velocity, they could probably move out of the way. And also, let's say when you're really going to start affecting that bullet drop, we're going to continue aiming directly in front of us. Obviously, we got our point blank friend right here. Not going to be an issue to just aim at him. There you go. And then we're going to have our 50. We're going to aim right at him. 50 is still not going to be too much of an issue, but you saw there was a bit slight of a delay, so you're going to have to aim just a little bit. And then, of course, asshole is in the way. We're going to go at the 100, and obviously we're probably not going to hit the 100 with the bullet drop on this thing. It does look like you're going to have a somewhat straight shot right there where you saw it at the 50, and then the 100 you're going to have to be aiming up a little bit. Look at that. This reticle to actually help you where they are is going to have to be going to just even that miss. Yeah, because that bullet drop does start affecting pretty hard. There you go. You have to aim up this high to hit a target at the 150. So that is something to keep in mind. Versus, say you're coming in at a much quicker speed than this, and then you turn around and drive away and let your bad boy reload, which is probably going to be your most effective way of using the Avalanche. Because even here, I got the Hadron with the other one, and you can see it does take a little bit of time to actually reload this beast. So just imagine without the benefits to reload. So that is going to be our little intro of the Avalanche. Now, of course, I'm going to try to pick up some builds and see what I can do with it. Believe it or not, and I'm probably not going to use this thing right here. This is probably the one weapon in the game that you could probably go grab an art build, so say like a garbage truck, and just slap it on top and actually be decently effective with it. The weapon does so much damage that if you can find a way to stay alive, even with something of this quality, see, just basically a little art build tank, you can actually hurt almost any opponent you face. Of course, if you start going against some relics and whatnot, it might be a bit of a challenge, but you can definitely mess up some people. So if you want to really have a good time with an art build, you know, have something more realistic such as this is probably going to be your best friend of a weapon if you really want to scratch that itch. Because literally, I had played with a garbage truck before, slapped this thing on top, painted it green, and I was somehow getting kills. So yeah, let that demonstrate the power of the Avalanche. However, before I go into some builds, of course, if this thing has so much projectile damage, that you're probably wondering how can you actually counter this and keep it from just getting deep and within you. And if you can just keep facing him, have like, say, like bumpers or things that are going to reduce, say, the projectile percentage. So you got like the screener bumpers, you got like the Iberian parts that are going to have 15% reduction. Let's see, right here, see that 15% reduction. You're going to have the screeners right here, so this is going to be part of it. They got like 3 different bumpers. The impact, that 25%, screener 25%, observer 25%. You stack these things in front of you, and then you get things like the Steppenwolf parts right here, and you slap this behind it, so that way you're having a nice balance of explosive over projectile. So that way you have the projectile ones in the front to stop the projectile from advancing, and then you have the Steppenwolf parts right behind it to absorb the blast damage. That way you can probably take 1, 2, or if you're lucky, 3 avalanche shots without just being completely messed up. So that is one way to counter it. Of course, you might be able to use a shield or something. However, I don't have a buddy right now to actually test that to see how accurate that is. But I think maybe the shields could absorb like 1 or 2 avalanches. I'm sure it's probably more than that, like if you really look at the durability of it. Let's go. See if I got one in here. I should have. Bear with me, bear with me. I have no idea where it is. Let's just look at the ages. Does it say? 40% is reduced by 40%. I was hoping it would give me like a little bit of a number thing to actually tell me how much it's gonna be, but I'm sure if you use shields, it's not gonna just like penetrate right through. I don't think there's really much that can really penetrate through shields besides like scorpions, so that could be another counter, is just having some shields up. But obviously the biggest counter is just gonna stay on the move, just keep avoiding these slow projectiles, and as long as he's not gonna be like a hit and run type of build and just runs right up on you and shoots you directly, you should be kind of fine facing the Avalanche. But at the same time, having those hit and run builds are probably going to be the most fun you're going to have with this thing, because if you try to actually use it as a mortar system, you might have a bad time when... Nope, hit the wrong one. Also hit the wrong one again. And it just started a game. But you're probably going to have a bad time... I'm going to stop that real quick. You're probably going to have a bad time when you're like, oh hey, the enemy is right over there on the other side of that crater map, and he has an autocannon, and you're like, oh, I have a mortar, I'm going to probably try to hit him, and then you're just playing this game to where you see, you kind of got to aim up. This isn't like, this is console, it's not PC where you can just like look around. Yeah, console, the thing is going to move, and even so, going to be like, this looks about the other end of the crater. Trying to predict where you're gonna hit this bus at. Yeah, that was way farther than I thought. I thought it was gonna land like before the bus. But you can see what I mean. Even with that big old blast radius, it's gonna be similar to a Mandrake, to where you're still gonna want to hit within that general area to actually do some damage, and of course you're going to want to hit them more directly, so that way you can maximize your damage, because you can see most of the damage is actually coming from the projectile, and if you want to really get all of it in there, you're going to want to hit them for that 500 with the projectile, and that way when it does explode, you're going to be getting tons more damage with the explosive. So yes, you can hit near them and hit with the explosive, but this is going to be a lot harder than if you can hit them directly with this thing. So now that I basically gave all those pointers, let's basically try to... Oh, actually one more. If you want to play on the defensive, so let's go take a look at our cabins real quick. And maybe you could also use Jade for that projectile speed. That could probably help you a little bit. But it's kind of a slow shot, so maybe 10% might not help you too much, but it's still definitely a benefit. Now, out of all your cabins, obviously lightweight ones are probably not going to be the best. You could probably try like the Averter or the Harpy, but you got to try to remember, Aggressor or the Harpy, or, you know, if you wanted to use this thing for damage, these are going to be light cabins. This only holds, and this one's upgraded, so it's like 9,350, so you're going to get roughly like 10k if you use Grizzly, and that's basically taking like a third, yeah, like around a third plus of your overall mass. So then you got to worry about frames and everything, and it's just going to kind of mess you up a little bit. I don't think you're going to need this for accuracy, it's not really a problem, but if you're trying to go for like more damage, you got, you know, you could probably maybe use the Ghost. Obviously, if the quicker you reload is probably going to be your best way of actually absorbing damage, so running things like the Humpback and whatnot are probably not going to be the greatest. If your DPS is probably really going to come from running these. You could probably use a shield thing, you know, for defense. You could use like defense cabins, so say this, or you could try a Beholder. But really, what was the one I was looking at? It's going to be the Master and the Kronos, I think, are going to be your best for defense. As long as you keep them facing towards the big ass weapon, you can basically connect these to your Avalanche, and you can just basically keep healing that thing. Because you look at these and that 30% whatnot, you know, you got the 50% or whatever from this one, right? You're gonna kind of basically see a much higher percentage and basically durability gained than if you're going to have those smaller, weaker weapons. So basically you're going to be getting back large amounts of health back onto your weapon, so you could just basically keep soaking up damage. So really you got basically a choice here. You could either be a tank, where I would recommend you're going to run like a Kronos or a Master cabin. Probably Master, because it's a It's a medium cabin, so you have a bit more than the Kronos Light, which I think the Kronos would probably heal just a little bit better than what the Master can do, especially since it has that high profile on the Master, which is going to be another thing. The profile of this weapon right here, where how big it is, I would say try not to pass the top. Try to keep this thing as low as possible, so that way it's just that solid block, and that way you're not too tall so people are just shooting you, like making you just a bigger target and easier to hit. So as soon as you put this thing down to where you want it, try not to, I would say try not to go over it. Like this is just an art build, so you know it's a little bit over. This is not even that bad. This is probably still functional, but if you go too high, that could definitely mess you up. But again, you know, Master, Kronos for defense with some Grizzly, and then you got the reloading cabin. So that's my final piece. I don't think there's anything else I can really add to this. So let's go take a look at the builds I decided to choose, which I don't think I'm going to do too many, probably just one or two. Alright guys, so right before I start showing you off the vehicles, there's just one more thing I wanted to share, and that's basically the radius of this thing without any, like, you know, boosting like from the Harpy or anything like that for the explosive radius. So this is just going to be purely what it is by on its own, and I kind of marked it right here, and I put those two vehicles side by side so that you can get a rough idea of this is where you're going to shoot if you want to do any damage to an enemy. So you do get a decently sized blast radius that you can damage anyone within this zone right there. And then of course the closer you get, it should start doing more damage. I think I shot a little too far away. So you can see the blast damage, like even right there, if you even hit near, you can start doing some real powerful hits. But that's gonna be roughly around the area where you're gonna do even a little bit of damage right there, and then I think I shot a little close right here, which that is kind of something you want to kind of think about, because if you start aiming down, or like you're on some type of terrain or something, so say the enemy is like right here and you're trying to hit him, yeah, the bullet drop does kind of drop it down just barely enough that it can actually connect to the ground a lot of the time. So like you're thinking, oh, I'm gonna hit the enemy right here, and then bam, you hit the ground and you do more damage to yourself. Or you're like positioned on top of a hill, so say you're on the fortress map and you're trying to shoot him, but you're just like, oh, he's right there, and then bam, you hit yourself. So that one might not show it right there for me because it's on that slope, so I think it's kind of pushing the gun up. But I have noticed while playing, I have shot myself a few times because I'm thinking that the cannon is lifted up high enough, and then all of a sudden it's like the projectile just barely skimmed across the floor or something and just blew up in my face. Now I'm coming back here because I just want to show you this one other thing, because it does seem like the blast radius, it'll put some impulse onto the vehicle next to it, but it won't actually hurt them if you hit another vehicle directly. So let's move back and let's try shooting him on the side. So you notice that's the marker right there. You see this is much closer to each other. I just shot him on the side. You think the blast radius would come this way, but it didn't actually do any damage to the vehicle right next to it. But you see, crater is right there. So if I do a similar crater, so what is that, like roughly right here? Like almost 500 damage. And that one was actually a little bit farther than that one too. So that is something you also kind of want to think about, is for whatever reason, if you hit a vehicle directly, it just basically cancels out any damage you could do to another vehicle right next to it, versus if you shoot right here, you can hit both. And that was just a little bit I wanted to share before we get to the showcase. So let's see what the two runner-uppers are going to be for this video. Alright guys, so the two builds that I'm going to be using today is going to be Dikey-Del by Max Metella. Let's take a look at that. It's going to basically be the lower power score one. It's going to have the Dead Man Cabin with some Omni Wheels. So this is going to be the one that we can turn around with and whatnot. It's going to have the Discharger instead of the flywheel, so it's just going to have the special. And I did take off this ammo pack, and I fixed up the front a little bit, because if the front got hit like by anything with explosives, the two Omni wheels in the front just got taken off, and I think it was because of this ammo box. So I did replace the front with a 2x4 frame, because there was like a big space right there, and this side right here I basically just took that thing off and put an extended ammo box right there, and I was pretty set with this thing. You will notice that with the dead man cabin and the discharger, this thing is going to reload just a little bit slower. However, it is pretty maneuverable, so you can get into some decent places, and you know, having this big armor thing in the front, it was decently survivable as long as you were facing the enemy that was shooting at you. So that's going to be our first one, and then of course we're going to have Stug Panzer X306 by Aros, I'm not sure, it was at 19,944, or Rice 19,944. I think this is one of the first ones that ever came out, especially with how high the like ratio here. This one is going to be one that doesn't have an ammo box, so I did put an extended ammo box on there. However, as it was just right at the tonnage and I didn't want to change anything else, is going to be a little bit slower than the base design. However, I really didn't want to just go in there with just 10 rounds. As you can see, it does not have an ammo box. This one's going to be more on Bigfoots for that hit and run style tactic, and it's going to be with the Hadron cabin, the King Mine, and the flywheel all in one. So you're going to notice that this thing is going to be shooting and reloading way faster. So with further ado, let's get into our showcase with these builds. Alright, so here we go with Max Matilla. So it's going to be the 4 Omni wheels, like I said, with the Dead Man and the Discharger. It definitely is an improvement, you know, when you want to reload. And you can see right here, I'm trying to aim up. That's something I didn't mention, is when you're moving on terrain, and since the barrel of it, that big stubby barrel, is a little... And look, there's the other thing I mentioned. You saw that? I was thinking I was shooting over it, and I just shot myself. That's what I'm talking about. So that's two things right there, where you got to be careful not to shoot yourself, and then you also got to be careful with the terrain, because that big stubby barrel does take its time going up or to the side. So if you're moving forward with this hit and run style tactic, you might have to like chase them just a little bit, because you can see him. Yeah, that slow projectile couldn't catch him. I honestly thought I was gonna hit him there, and I was just like, shit. But you really got to kind of keep that in mind, that where the barrel is pointing, because since it does have that slowness to it, it does take forever, especially when you're moving, and then the terrain is just like, screw you, buddy. But look, you can see when you actually make contact, look at that really hurts. And then come on, get him again. There we go. And he lost both of his back wheels. And we got a cock block. Like what I say, don't be those type of players. Alright, he lost another wheel. He has one more wheel on him. We got another shotgun guy coming in. So I'm not really too used to using the Avalanche, so I do got to try to keep in mind that the projectile, it's definitely not as fast as an autocannon, and obviously not as fast as an instant machine gun, because you know, you just shoot and it's there. You can see like right there. And honestly, it's not too bad. Like when I was talking about having to lob this thing, you don't really have to aim all the way up to really lob. It's more if there's just buildings and shit, you can just try to predict. And I've actually made contact just lobbing those big shots more than I've expected, and I think it's mainly because of the blast radius. And like, look at that blast radius. This thing's just tearing his ass up. And then boop. And then right here, if you can just take your time aiming a little bit and try to realize where the shot's gonna go, and yep, stripped. This thing will definitely strip off weapons fairly nicely, actually. Alright, he's invisible, no weapon, already has the new autocannon, which is just absurd. Like, I don't think there's any way you could do that without actually, you know, being like a friend of the devs, or what else would there be? Like, just spending like $1,000 trying to get up there? Because damn, that's like 100, 200, like, no, there's no way. This is like around like 900 or something dollars. There we go, a nice strafe, and this dude is trying to strafe into me with his little meat grinders. The benefit here is that the Omni wheels are going to be a little bit more quick than the meat grinders. So I'm pretty sure we can say that this game is a done deal. That bush was definitely making a little... So see, this is what I mean. Even at these type of ranges, you really want to aim your shot. And it's something that I got to get used to just a little bit. I knew if I would have shot like directly like there, like if it was a machine gun, I would have missed again. But now he's got one meat grinder left. Let's just take that bad boy off. There we go, and this is going to be a done deal. Remember, never beep your horn at the enemy. Just be nice and finish him off. And boop. Another victory. Of course. Whoever doubted the power of the Avalanche. Alright guys, so now we're going to be moving on to our second game with Max's build. See if we can get some cheeky lobs in there. I would have shot a little bit earlier. But, you know, it takes a little bit to go up there, and you can see what just happened is got a nice face full of trailer, and ignore that part. That was me trying to get out of the scope. I was really trying to get out of that because I keep double tapping and putting myself right back into it like an idiot, trying to glob because, you know, people, usually someone goes over there. I wasn't making any contact, so maybe there wasn't anyone there, and there was definitely someone over there. Definitely. But I don't know about you guys. I have to usually go into my scope because I get a nice face full of car ass, and I don't know if you were like the guys from Strange Addictions, but I don't really want to have sex with my car. And there you go. I just shot the ground. Another proving point that I need to get used to the Avalanche because I'm not too familiar where the projectile is actually going to be landing due to that slow moving thing. But you can see, like, if you just basically come up, try to help your team get that hit and run, you'll definitely tear them up. Like that, you see that hover right there? And shit. Ignore that one too. But hovers with the Avalanche, oof. That's deadly. Like the Avalanche's blast radius when you hit the side of a hover usually just takes so many of those things off that they just get messed up. And I believe somebody just left the game, probably didn't like that nice Avalanche hit to the face. Alright, Cannoneers that way. Oh, here we go. Let's see if we can demonstrate. Never mind, just flat out kill the dude. That works too. Again, Avalanche versus hover. Avalanche will tear your ass a new one. Alright, coming back. Is this the cannon guy again? It looks like it, and boop. Just deleted. Like, Avalanche just hits like a truck. This dude is kind of far back with our team. I don't think we're really gonna make it. I would try to do a lob right there, but then the terrain just kind of messed me up, and I don't think we're gonna make it in time. Nope. Oh well, that's a good victory. Got some decent kills there. Let's move on to Mr. Rice's build. Alright guys, so now we're going to be moving on up in power score with Sorosso's build, changing off our 4 Omni wheels for 6 Bigfoots. This thing is not going to be as maneuverable, especially since it feels a little sluggish due to not having enough tonnage, so our acceleration is a bit down, which definitely kind of shows that this might not be the first. And sorry, I just had a really bad delay shot right there, so let's try to make it up. Yep, a nice 1,000. Alright, try to keep on. Oof, Typhoon right to the side, but got a nice kill and a retreat. And of course, bots don't know how to drive on bridges, so let's flip our boy over here. Alright, looks like the enemy is pushing on our teammate right here. And, nope, he blocked us. I was going to take a shot at Damin, or whatever his name is. Okay, nope, still blocking. And, that sucks. Like I said, Avalanche versus hovers, that would have been a real nasty hit and just completely screwed that up. But we're going to get a hit on their other bot. Nice 1,000. Drove right into the wall. Good thing it's a goddamn bot, because that would have been a nice clean Typhoon hit for him, and he didn't take advantage. Still kind of got it. That looked like it hit the wheel, but also the center of the vehicle? I'm not even sure. Alright, try to reverse with our teammate. Got a nice hit on whatever that is, and I'm stuck on his leg. That was not very great. Okay, now we got the Fortune guy coming for us. Luckily, with the Omni box... Does it have an Omni box? Yeah. No. This one doesn't have the Omnibox, and I'm also saying that wrong. I meant Amamore. This one is using just straight reload for maximum damage. But you can see it's slightly sparking now, but I definitely took some fortunes to the face. Whoop, boom, and you know what? That was a nice save for our teammate right there, taking this tank tracks off, and then boof. That was a nice first game with this build. Not too bad, just a little sluggish because he didn't have an ammo box right off the bat, but let's see if we can make it up in the next game. Alright, here we go, Old Town. I'm going to try to do some lobbings, but this is going to be kind of a map where there's going to be the non-destructible buildings everywhere. So even though you can kind of try to make an educated guess and lob like so, you're most likely probably just going to make contact with buildings unless they're right next to the building. So looks like it's going to be a game of all real players. So hopefully this goes pretty well for us. Let's see, who is this? Huckleberry, good shot. That was a nice shot on him. I'm starting to, as you can see, I'm starting to get used to the where I need to shoot. you honestly, you don't need to aim too high. Surprisingly, like I was thinking you needed to aim just a little bit higher, but it's. I think I hit him, but the game isn't registering the amount of damage. Because you know I'm supposed to get damage numbers, and I've been noticing that using the Avalanche, for whatever reason, I'm making hits, but it won't do what you just saw there. And tell me that was not a really nice hit right in that dude's face. Just lob that thing right across. Nope. No blast damage for me on that one. It looks like if they stay grouped up, it's definitely going to make it a lot easier to do so. Got a guy trying to sneak up on us. What is this, a flamethrower, machine gun? What is this? I think that's Huckleberry with the destructors. I think they're on hovers though. Just drive over that real quick. Never nice to be in an incinerator fire, but it does feel like it got nerfed a little bit. And there you go. Look, that's 2 times hovers just got completely smacked by the Avalanche. Like if the Avalanche isn't anti-hover, I don't know what is, man. Like, what are you gonna use, the other thing that shoots the fucking ground? Why? Like, okay, that was bullshit. I shot that dude right in the fire, and it only did 56 damage. Ain't no way. Ain't no way. That was a rob. You know, that was my kill. The game just robbed that shit from me and just let him get free damage. Alright, where'd he go? He's moving a little quick. He's trying to get behind his teammate here. Oh, just barely missed. Incinerator. Looked like he had a buzzsaw on the front. So just gonna turn around, do a quick comeback. The incinerator turned back around. Doesn't look like he has cap cans. My driving still sucks. Let's hit those machine guns. Bam, that was a good solid hit. And he is dead. Going back to the incinerator. I think the dude who was on fire just left. Incinerator is self-destructing, but didn't even get an option to. Alright, last guy. He is backing up. Didn't want to shoot when he had the shield up. Nice hit. Gonna keep going in, and nice. Now, that's how you do a hit and run with the Avalanche, guys. Alright, ladies and gents, this is going to be the last game of the night, and I'm kind of seeing why people might not want to play with this weapon all that much, but at the same time, if you master this thing, it's going to be a very solid 12 energy weapon. It's actually very strong and very kind of underrated, and I'm surprised people aren't using it that much anymore. Especially if you go into games where it's just hovers like it used to be. This thing is kind of one of the banes of hovers. Like this hover of kryptonite, this thing just slaughters them. And that might be why people are going to the legs so much, because legs are going to be a bit more difficult to deal with. And I can kind of also see why people don't want to use this thing because of the bullet drop and having a hard time aiming where it is, and you could accidentally shoot things you don't want to hit even though you don't think it's going to hit them. Being a frontal weapon and then having 100% more damage to yourself, there's a lot of drawbacks that it kind of makes sense why they have it, just because this thing hits so hard, but at the same time it is kind of ruin it. We're going to do a push here to see if we can get our teammates to run up. Of course, it's a hover. And you know that was a good ass shot right there. Just complete sniped his ass. Now our team is finally getting bold and trying to run in. You see, having my front face where they were just shooting at my gun. It didn't really take too much damage until I turned to face my ass. And just look at that. His whole side is gone. This dude is about to get just shot and blew him up instantly. This weapon is so strong. We got a dude right up here. Look, even driving forward, if that wasn't like that, you know, we probably would have hit him. Kind of makes me wonder if you put an oppressor engine, if it's gonna fix that, so that way you can aim a little bit better. It might be beneficial for hit and runs, so that way your little turret cannon piece in the front would actually, you know, point quicker and not get messed up by the terrain as much, because that is another drawback, is the terrain really messes you up. And besides, like, the slow velocity, it's like I said, if you can master the shot and get used to all that, you're gonna be a force to be reckoned with. This is a great weapon. And here we go, and boop. I don't even think any of his weapons were sparking, and I just instantly deleted that cyclone. So look, this is just showing the real power of this thing. Most shots are going to be like 1,000 or plus damage. Oop, he's heated. If you... Oh well, I think I'm going to kill him in this shot. Boop, yep. I was hoping to hit that generator and just completely mess him up. It's going to be kind of like the Arthron, to where you want to move fast, you want to be basically kind of a more supporting teammate, and since, you know, they're both one shot, you just kind of want to shoot and retreat, or try to stay behind your team. But definitely stay with your team, because if you get a whole bunch of enemies on you, that weapon can definitely get peeled off quickly, because, you know, if you do the 10-second damage meter, this thing, like, see, trying to hit him, that slow projectile, kind of makes it a little messed up. But with all those drawbacks, there is definitely some good positives when you make contact, and the durability, and that it's just overall going to be a great weapon as long as you can basically synchronize with your team. If anything, I would say this is probably going to be like I would say an 8. I would give this an 8 out of 10 weapon. Anyways, guys, if you enjoyed this, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.